Streets are calling, stealing from the light.
Hey guys, my name is Jordan Downey and I'm the director of Critters Bounty Hunter. If you haven't seen the short film, go ahead and pause here and check it out on my YouTube channel, because what I'm going to do now is walk you through a step-by-step process for how we made the film. You're watching part 4 of a 6-part series where I'll take you onto the set of Critters Bounty Hunter and show you how we pulled off many of the film's practical effects. We started shooting Critters Bounty Hunter on November 17th. That's less than 1 month from the time that I decided we were going to make this short, so it was a really fast turnaround to go into production. Once we started filming, we shot for about 2.5 days. We were at the location for a total of 4 days, and we had a total of 4 crew members. It was myself, Kevin Stewart, the DP, Ricky Fosheim, who owned the house and was the producer on the film, and my girlfriend Gina Luciani, who was there to help out as well. So all in all, it was just 4 of us on set to shot everything that you see in the finished film. I actually ended up wearing the bounty hunter costume, so that's me playing the bounty hunter. Also, it was me doing the puppeteering of the critter. So we'll talk about this in a little bit, but that got complicated because once we did the critter attack, it was actually me biting my own neck. We all did 100 different jobs and chipped in anywhere we could, and everyone worked together. I couldn't have done it without the crew. We shot on the Blackmagic Cinema camera that Kevin owned at the time, and also his lens. So we only had one lens, and it was just a simple little zoom lens. We only had a few lights that we rented from a friend. We also rented a short slider so that we could get some slow, smooth camera moves that work really well for creating suspense, as well as just being flexible to move the camera quickly on the fly. We didn't record any sound on set. All of it was going to be done in post-production, so we didn't have to worry about sound other than what the camera was picking up. Also, for this kind of a film, you don't always want to use a lot of that production audio anyways. The bounty hunter costume would sound plasticky with every footstep. The critter might sound rubbery. I'd be talking over things or making silly critter voices, so a lot of that stuff was unusable anyways, and we knew we would just replace it all later on. Now that you have a little better understanding of our crew size and some of the gear that we brought with us, I'm going to walk you through step by step how we actually executed some of these scenes. When the bounty hunter arrives to the critter smashed under the bookcase in the beginning of the film, I needed a lot of blood and guts to be under the critter, so we ended up using spaghetti sauce actually, but spaghetti sauce is red. The blood in the finished film, however, is green. So we ended up actually color correcting the red sauce to be green so that it would match the neon alien blood that we've seen in the Critters movies. I'll explain later how we ended up doing that, but for now just know that was spaghetti sauce to create that effect. We only had one critter puppet, so that is the main critter that we did put underneath that bookcase carefully, and also you can see that one of the arms I already talked about that we cut off, we did lay in there so that it looks like it was kind of reaching out or has been crushed. When the bounty hunter goes upstairs and first encounters the critter, he spins around, the cannon extends, and he shoots and blows up a chair. This was a really important scene because I knew later for the final attack, he wasn't going to use the cannon. But I did think that it was important in this short film to see the cannon fire at least once and to destroy something on a small budget. This was a really fun thing for us to figure out how to pull off. The first part of this sequence that was tricky to figure out is how would we get the bounty hunter cannon to extend and compress. I knew that depending on where the camera placement was, we could hide a rod on the backside of the larger PVC part of the barrel. So we put a dowel rod on the backside that actually connected to the larger part, which goes smoothly over the smaller part of the barrel. So when I would pull or push that rod, it would extend or compress the barrel, just like you've seen in the movies. It was all done 100% manually. When you see the final effect in the movie, it's actually me controlling the movement of the barrel. So my hand and the rod are just out of frame and you never can tell that I'm operating it. The next part of this sequence was getting the chair to explode. Knowing that I wanted the bounty hunter cannon to destroy something in the house without actually hurting the house, I ended up going with a small piece of furniture. So I went to a thrift store and bought a chair and decided that we would cut a few of the segments off. So the chair was pre-cut in a few different areas, and then we tied fishing line to those areas that ran on opposite ends of the room. Now that we had the chair cut and the fishing lines attached, we needed to coordinate how we would actually pull off the shot. This took all 4 of us, and the camera was actually unmanned for the shot. I was in the bounty hunter costume and operating the gun. Kevin was off to the side, rolling the critter ball. Gina and Ricky both had the fishing line, and on a cue, they were gonna pull in opposite ends so that the chair would fall over and break apart. So on action, I turned the bounty hunter cannon, The ball goes rolling across the floor. I'm following it, sweeping with the gun. Gina and Ricky pull the chair apart just as the critter rolls around the corner and the chair falls over and it looks like I shot it up. Most of this effect was done in camera and we shot it from 2 different angles. There's the wide shot where the cannon follows the critter and you see the chair start to explode. And we also got a low angle close up of the chair falling and breaking right into the camera's lens. 3, 2, 1, fire. When you combine the 2 shots of the chair exploding with the bounty hunter spinning and the barrel extending and the critter rolling away, you get a really effective little sequence. The most important sequence of this entire short film was always going to be the final critter attack. This sequence was a lot of fun for me because I was always really interested in how the Kyoto brothers pulled off all of these practical effects in the movies, especially making the critter roll and jump and fall and raise up. A lot of times in movies like this, you have 5 different puppets to do the job of one effect. I actually think breaking the critter attack down and making that work smoothly on camera was the most rewarding experience of the whole project. Step 1 of the sequence was shooting the close-ups of the critter raising up. The critter was actually sitting on top of a shelf that had a little gap between 2 boards, so we could separate the boards just enough so that I could get my hand up and control the critter. The idea is that it blended into these stuffed animals and would raise its head up and show its teeth, and you would realize that you were looking at the critter but didn't know it until it showed off its fangs. What made this sequence difficult is that I just mentioned there's this gap in the boards that was big enough for my arm to get up to puppeteer the critter, but I was not going to be able to move my arm out of those boards, so we had to break it up into a few shots. The first shot was a close-up on the critter as it raises up and shows off its teeth, and it starts to move as much as my arm could. Then we cut. I pulled the critter and my arm out from between this gap in the boards, and I was in front. And all that was is I literally just had it jump right towards the camera lens and have the teeth envelop the lens. At that point now we got into something really silly on set where I was actually performing the critter and the bounty hunter at the same time. It worked out that way because we were limited on hands and limited on space. And also it was just easier for me to do the controlling and swirling around than have somebody else trying to follow my movement and stick to it. So we framed it in a way that you can't tell that I'm actually controlling the critter as well. So when you see it first leap onto the bounty hunter's neck and they go tumbling towards the wall and hit the wall and he's struggling to pull it off, that's me doing both the bounty hunter performing as well as the critter puppeteering at the same time, including the pulling it off. Once the bounty hunter pulls the critter off of his throat and throws it, now we switch to the basketball, and it goes rolling and bouncing across the floor for a brief shot. Then you cut back to seeing the bounty hunter grab his throat. That gives us enough time to cut back to the critter, which is now the puppet again, and I'm laying just out of frame under camera, where I'm raising up the critter and we're slowly sliding in and we cut back and then it goes tumbling down. The last part of this sequence, which was the most difficult to pull off, but also the most fun, was taking the critter ball and having it jump up and attack and lunge at the throat. This was done 100% in camera by attaching a fishing line to the basketball, which would yank and pull the critter towards us. Then, just out of frame below the camera, I was already holding the critter puppet. So as soon as the ball left the shot, I immediately raised the puppet up, and it looks like when the ball rolls that it goes aerial, but you never actually see it expand into the critter puppet. You never see it jump or leap or do anything like that, but the effect is really simple and it sells. Now I'm back inside the bounty hunter costume, and off camera somebody literally just throws me the critter puppet, which I grab mid-air. The next step is I have the critter puppet on and I'm holding it by the hair. I slam it against the wall and make it talk at the same time. The bounty hunter then pulls the knife out and sticks it into the critter's mouth. We had a few different knives for this, some of which we cut in half so that that could stick into the critter's mouth and look like that it had gone all the way into the wall. We did shoot one moment in this sequence in reverse by putting the knife in the critter's mouth and yanking it out and closing the mouth. That way when you play it back, it looks like he stabs the critter. The reason we did that is because it was too hard to hit the knife in the perfect place in the mouth every time. It was just a lot easier for us to do it in reverse, and it's such a quick moment you really can't tell. Finally, we just hung the critter on a nail against the wall and put the fake knife that had been cut in half into the critter's mouth so that it looked like the knife was stabbing it into the wall, when really it was just being held on by a nail. The last big effect was making the critter eggs move inside the basket and then ultimately blowing them up. The way we made them move is I just stuck my hand in the basket under the cloth and under the sheets and had my fingers on the bottom of the egg and just wiggled it around right out of camera so you couldn't tell that I was moving it. To make them blow up, we actually took the styrofoam out of the felt so that it was a hollow felt, and we did tie fishing line. If you freeze frame, you probably can see it. We tied fishing line onto the felt and just yanked them apart into different pieces, knowing that the digital effects and dust and explosions that I would add later would kind of mask the fishing line and the fact that the felt felt hollow and it didn't actually feel like an egg. After the cannon has blown up the eggs, we actually discovered a little technique to get smoke to come out of the barrel. The way we did this is that we had a fog machine on set, and we actually injected some fog into the opening in the front of the barrel. And when you pulled the barrel closed and compressed it, it actually let some of that smoke out the front of the barrel, and it looked like it was cooling off and powering down. The most crucial part of production that I haven't mentioned yet was the bounty hunter's head. On set, we used a green screen hood that we intended to replace later on to give the bounty hunter its glowing head effect. Now, we had done some tests, but we didn't know what the final effect was going to look like. And I've got to say, it was gut-wrenching shooting that, not knowing exactly if this would work. Because if that didn't work, you have no short film. You can't have a guy walking around with a green screen hood. But we weren't sure if we were going to completely replace the head, or if we were going to just add a glow to the green, or if we were going to change it to blue or another color. We had done some tests, but we didn't know exactly how this was going to turn out. So when we shot, we went in with a lot of hope and faith that we could make this work in post-production. I always wanted to do the head effect practically on set and all in camera, but we couldn't figure out the best way to pull that off. I thought maybe we could put some sort of a translucent hood over LEDs or some sort of light panel or a strip and get that to glow. We thought of glow-in-the-dark paint or some sort of a luminescent paint. That wasn't really working. In the first two Critters movies, you can tell that the actors are wearing some sort of a prosthetic mask that gives it a little bit of an alien shape that blends in the eyes and the nose and ears, so you don't really have a human form underneath there. I really wanted to use an effect like that, but I couldn't get the mask just right. We did try creating a mask over a hood with latex to give it that alien shape, but it looked too rough, it wasn't smooth, and it just wasn't working well. The mask itself was actually really difficult to see out of, which must have been a problem for the actors in the 80s as well. In this case, we had no other option, so we decided to rely on digital effects to help us out. Once we decided to go with digital effects for the bounty hunter head, I wore a green screen hood on set, but the hood actually didn't start out green. I don't remember why we didn't get a chroma green hood to begin with. I think we couldn't find one, or this one was cheaper. I don't know what it was, but I had the dumb idea of painting the white hood green. So we went to Home Depot and bought green paint and painted the white hood. Now, what I didn't think about is breathing in paint fumes for the entire shoot. So I actually had a cold when we were shooting in the winter, which made shooting Critters pretty miserable for me. And I'm inside of this hood, which I can barely breathe out of, and was smelling like paint fumes. So it was actually a pretty horrible experience being inside the costume and inside that mask. In the end, it worked out fine and it wasn't too bad. I just had to come up for air and lift the mask off in between takes a lot, but it was pretty uncomfortable being inside that costume. Now that we had finished shooting Critters over the course of a few nights, it was time to move into post-production, where we would tackle the editing, the sound design, the color correction, the glowing head, and the music. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you liked this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out the rest of these behind the scenes videos, and I've also got some other short films up there that I think you might like as well. Thanks again, see you soon.